April 30th, 1945, 3:30 p.m., Berlin. 15 meters beneath the shattered Reich Chancellery Garden, Adolf Hitler pressed a Walther PPK to his temple and ended the thousand-year dream in a concrete tomb. Soviet artillery shook dust from the ceiling beams. Outside, Red Army soldiers were 300 meters away, closing through rubble that had once been monuments to Aryan supremacy. The Führerbunker, a claustrophobic warren of 30 rooms sunk beneath tons of reinforced concrete, had become the coffin of Nazi ideology. The Americans will never find this place. Goebbels had sneered weeks earlier to a trembling adjutant, convinced the labyrinth would remain a mystery, perhaps even a shrine. Let them search. They will only find shadows. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed. Every week we uncover the stories the world forgot. What Goebbels didn't know was that American intelligence officers were already piecing together architectural diagrams, interrogating prisoners, and mapping every bunker, tunnel, and shelter beneath Berlin with the cold efficiency of men who had spent 4 years dismantling Fortress Europe brick by brick. The Führerbunker would not remain hidden. It would be documented, dissected, and ultimately erased, not by bombs, but by a deliberate campaign to deny it any future as a monument to evil. The bunker itself was a marvel of desperate engineering. Construction had begun in 1944 as Allied bombers turned Berlin into a moonscape of craters and ash. The complex consisted of 2 levels, the upper Vorbunker, built first, and the deeper Führerbunker, sunk 4 meters lower. The main structure measured roughly 18 meters by 30 meters, smaller than a tennis court, divided into 18 cramped rooms. Walls were 2 meters thick, reinforced concrete rated to withstand 500-pound bombs. The ceiling was another 4 meters of solid concrete and earth, designed to absorb the concussion of blockbusters. Ventilation shafts, emergency exits, and a diesel generator room completed the claustrophobic fortress. By April 1945, it housed Hitler, Eva Braun, Goebbels and his family, Martin Bormann, and a rotating cast of generals, secretaries, and guards, approximately 40 souls breathing recycled air thick with mildew and fear. The air inside tasted of damp concrete and diesel fumes. Fluorescent tubes hummed overhead, casting sallow light on maps marked with phantom armies that no longer existed. The floors were covered in threadbare carpets, salvaged from the ruined chancellery above. Hitler's personal quarters, a sitting room, bedroom, and small study, occupied the bunker's southwest corner. Furniture was sparse, a narrow bed, a desk cluttered with architectural sketches of the rebuilt Berlin that would never be, a sofa where he married Eva Braun 36 hours before their deaths. The conference room reeked of sweat and stale tobacco. Generals delivered reports of divisions that existed only on paper, while the Führer traced troop movements with trembling hands, his left arm shaking from Parkinson's, his eyes glazed with amphetamines and denial. On April 30th, as Soviet shells cratered the garden above, Hitler dictated his final testament, blaming Jews and traitors for Germany's collapse, then retreated to his suite with Eva Braun. At approximately 3:30 p.m., a single gunshot echoed through the bunker's concrete halls. Aides found him minutes later. Hitler slumped on the sofa, a bullet through his right temple, blood pooling on the armrest. Eva beside him, cyanide capsules shattered between her teeth. Their bodies were carried up the emergency stairs into the garden, doused with gasoline from jerry cans, and set alight in a shallow crater. Soviet artillery provided the funeral dirge. The flames burned for hours, reducing flesh to charred fragments. Goebbels poisoned his 6 children that night, then ordered an SS orderly to shoot him and his wife in the garden. Their bodies burned beside Hitler's ashes. By May 2nd, 1945, the Red Army had stormed the Chancellery. Soviet soldiers descended into the Führerbunker with rifles raised, flashlights cutting through smoke and darkness. They found empty rooms, overturned furniture, scattered documents, and a faint chemical stench. The discovery was chaotic. Half the complex was flooded from broken pipes. Papers floated in oily water. Bloodstains marked the walls. Soviet intelligence officers, Smersh counterintelligence troops, began cataloging everything. Maps, letters, Hitler's monogrammed silverware, even the sofa, where he died. The bunker became a crime scene. Every room photographed, every artifact bagged. Stalin wanted proof. He wanted the body. What followed was one of history's strangest autopsy sagas. Soviet troops recovered charred remains from the garden crater, jawbones, skull fragments, a piece of scalp. Forensic teams matched dental records provided by Hitler's dentist, captured in Berlin. The jawbone fit Hitler's dental work. A complex bridge, gold crowns, porcelain veneers. The Soviets quietly buried the remains near their field headquarters in Feno, then exhumed and reburied them multiple times over the next decades, first in Magdeburg, East Germany, sealed in wooden crates beneath the Soviet Army base. For 24 years, the location remained a state secret. Stalin told the world nothing, fueling conspiracy theories that Hitler had escaped to Argentina, Antarctica, or the moon. The truth rotted in an unmarked grave. American intelligence officers reached Berlin weeks after the Soviets, their access restricted by occupation zones agreed at Yalta. U.S. Army investigators, including future CIA officers, interviewed witnesses, collected affidavits, and built a forensic case that Hitler had died in the bunker. Reports were compiled, classified, and filed. The Americans understood something the Soviets initially missed. The bunker itself was becoming a problem. Already, Berliners were scavenging bricks from the ruins above. Curiosity seekers were trying to enter the tunnels, and whispers of neo-Nazi pilgrimages were circulating. The Allies faced a choice: preserve the bunker as evidence of Nazi atrocity, or destroy it to prevent it from becoming a shrine. The Soviets chose obliteration. In 1947, they demolished what remained of the Reich Chancellery above ground, bulldozers grinding marble and granite into rubble. The bunker itself proved harder to kill. Explosives collapsed portions of the tunnels, but the reinforced concrete core resisted. Engineers flooded sections, sealed emergency exits with rubble, and buried the entrance beneath tons of debris. The site became a wasteland, then a parking lot, then a housing block in East Berlin. For 40 years, the Führerbunker lay entombed beneath apartment buildings, known to residents only as a vague legend. Street names were changed. Maps were redrawn. The East German government erected a children's playground directly above the site, a deliberate act of historical inversion, children's laughter burying the echoes of the Reich's death rattle. In 1970, the Soviets made their final move. Fearing the bunker's rediscovery after planned construction projects, KGB officers exhumed Hitler's remains from Magdeburg, drove them to a remote forest, crushed the bones to powder, and scattered the ashes in the Biederitz River. Only the jawbone and skull fragments were retained, eventually stored in Soviet archives. The bunker's location remained classified until German reunification in 1990. Even then, the German government refused to excavate or memorialize the site. A small information plaque was installed in 2006. No monument, no marker, just a gray panel describing what lay beneath the asphalt. The message was clear. This place would not be honored, only acknowledged as a grave of ideology. Today, the site is unremarkable. A parking lot for an apartment complex in Berlin's mid-district, bordered by Gertrude Kohlmarstrasse and in Den Minister Garden. Tourists consult maps, snap photos of the pavement, and leave. Beneath their feet, approximately 8 meters down, fragments of the Führerbunker remain: flooded rooms, collapsed ceilings, rusted ventilation ducts. German authorities have repeatedly stated they will never excavate. There is nothing of value there, a federal spokesman said in 2016. Only the ruins of a dictatorship that must remain buried. The site is monitored. Neo-Nazi gatherings are prohibited by law. Berlin has chosen memory over monument, education over enshrinement. American intelligence's role in this erasure was quieter, but no less significant. Declassified OSS and CIA files reveal extensive mapping of Nazi bunkers, tunnels, and hideouts across Germany, part of a broader effort to dismantle the infrastructure of fascism. U.S. Army engineers assisted in collapsing bunkers in Bavaria, Berchtesgaden, and Nuremberg. The Americans understood that symbols of power, and the Führer's bunker was a symbol too dangerous to preserve intact. Better to bury it, flood it. Forget the exact location of the conference room where Hitler raged at maps, the bedroom where he ended his life, the garden crater where his body burned. Better to let grass grow over it. Let concrete crumble in darkness. Let history remember the ideology without sanctifying the architecture. Survivors of the bunker told their stories in the decades that followed. Rokas Misch, Hitler's telephone operator, gave interviews until his death in 2013, describing the stench, the claustrophobia, the surreal normalcy of serving tea while the Reich collapsed. Traudl Junge, Hitler's secretary, wrote memoirs haunted by guilt. She had typed his final testament, heard the gunshot, fled the bunker as Soviet soldiers closed in. She spent the rest of her life asking how she had served a monster. "We knew," she said in a 2002 documentary, filmed blocks from the bunker site. "We knew and we did nothing." Her words are carved into a memorial stone in Munich, a counter-monument to complicity. The bunker's destruction was never just about erasing Hitler. It was about denying future extremists a pilgrimage site, a physical anchor for nostalgia and hate. The Allies had learned hard lessons from World War I, when German nationalists mythologized the trenches, the Freikorps, the stab-in-the-back legend. This time, there would be no Tannenberg Memorial, no eternal flame, no shrine where the faithful could gather and whisper that the Reich would rise again. The Führerbunker would be memory without monument, history without glory. The Soviets razed the chancellery. The Americans documented the crimes. The Germans built apartments and playgrounds. Together, they erased the physical site while preserving the historical record, a paradox that defines post-war Germany's relationship with its darkest chapter. Yet the bunker refuses to vanish completely. Books, documentaries, and films revisit it obsessively. Downfall, Der Untergang, a dozen History Channel specials. Virtual reality reconstructions let viewers walk its corridors, peer into Hitler's study, stand where his body burned. The fascination is morbid but understandable. The bunker represents the final collapse of industrial-scale evil, the moment when delusion met concrete reality 15 meters underground. It is a cautionary tale in reinforced concrete, a reminder that empires built on hate end in claustrophobic tombs, surrounded by enemies, breathing recycled air, waiting for the ceiling to collapse. American veterans who fought across Europe toward Berlin felt little sympathy. "Let it rot," said a former GI interviewed in 1985 for a PBS documentary, standing near the Brandenburg Gate. "We didn't cross France to preserve Hitler's hole in the ground." In a Moscow archive, a fragment of skull rests in a box, a piece of bone with a bullet hole, labeled Hitler Adolf. Soviet records claim it came from the Garden Crater. Western forensic experts have questioned the provenance. DNA tests in 2009 suggested the skull fragment might belong to a woman. The truth, like so much about the bunker, remains contested, fragmentary, buried beneath layers of Cold War secrecy and post-war confusion. Perhaps it doesn't matter. The real Adolf Hitler died in the bunker on April 30th, 1945. His Reich shattered, his armies annihilated, his dream of 1,000 years reduced to 12 years of slaughter and ruin. The skull is just bone. The bunker is just concrete. The ideology is just ash. And yet, people still search. Neo-Nazis post grainy photos on dark web forums, claiming to have found secret tunnels, hidden entrances, relics of the Reich. German authorities investigate, find nothing, issue warnings. The bunker beneath the parking lot remains sealed, flooded, inaccessible. The only way in is through history books, declassified files, survivor testimony, words and images that recreate the place without resurrecting it, that teach the lesson without sanctifying the site. This, too, is victory, denying the enemy even the ground he died on, transforming his fortress into a footnote, his tomb into a parking space, his memory into a warning. The American role in this erasure was subtle but decisive. While the Soviets controlled the physical site, U.S. intelligence shaped the global narrative, documenting the crimes, interrogating the survivors, ensuring that history would remember not the man but the monstrosity he unleashed. American prosecutors at Nuremberg used bunker documents to convict war criminals. American journalists filed reports from the ruins, describing the squalor, the delusion, the cowardice of leaders who sent millions to die while hiding underground. The message was clear. This is how tyranny ends, not in glory, but in a flooded concrete hole, surrounded by ghosts and lies. Today, in a quiet museum hangar in Washington, D.C., the National Archives hold thousands of pages of bunker-related documents, maps, interrogation transcripts, photographs taken by Soviet troops in May 1945. Researchers comb through them, piecing together timelines, verifying details, ensuring that memory remains accurate even as the physical site decays. A former Wehrmacht officer, interviewed in 1962, said something that echoes across the decades. "We thought the bunker would protect us. We thought concrete and steel could stop history. We were fools. The Americans didn't need to conquer the bunker. They conquered the world that built it, and that was enough." If you love untold stories from history's darkest hours, subscribe and join us on the next mission through time.